everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's on the Tube, where it's our show where we review things in the world of television, which normally include episode-to-episode reviews of currently on-air shows, season-by-season reviews, or doing these definitive series reviews. And this is the first time I'm doing one because everything I've reviewed so far has been either quick impressions or the show's still ongoing. So this is the first one, and it's for a mini-series nonetheless. For background purposes, we have already reviewed, because we're going to review the entire series of Under the Banner of Heaven. You can catch all the episodes right now on Hulu/FX, so go check that out right there. We did episode-by-episode reviews in the last 6 weeks leading into this one, so all of our episode reviews are out, so you can go check it out right now on youtube.com/ActionX videos to check them all out. All 6 of them are up. And here it is, the last one, where I'm going to talk about the whole series in full. And I decided, you know what, we're going full spoilers. So if you haven't yet seen Under the Banner of Heaven, go check it out on Hulu. Short take pre-spoilers. It's great. It's a great show. I would highly recommend it. It's enlightening. It's definitely thought-provoking. It can be a little disturbing at times, and honestly, I really am glad I did not live through those events, given the fact that, well, Jesus Christ, the events of this show is very kind of heavy at times, and it's mostly based on real life, so it's a little scary. Let's just say that much. But anywho, again, before I go I'm just going to start right away with spoilers, so please, again, this is your last chance. If you have not yet seen Under the Banner of Heaven, please go check it out right now on our channel. So, with that being said, let's go through it with overall first baseline impressions. I'm going more in specific into spoiler. I think this was a great show. I've been a bigger fan of Andrew Garfield in recent years, not just because of his role as Spider-Man, because we do every Doctor Who series reviewed, and he was in Doctor Who, I believe, series number 3. So that was, I think, the first time I seen him in a non-Spider-Man role, and then he was in Tick, Tick, Boom last year, which I swear to God he should have won the Oscar for, but it is what it is. It is what it is. And I know he's done a lot of other great work in between them. I haven't checked them all out yet. But once I heard that he was going to be starring in a TV show, and we do a TV show, so I was like, it's perfect. And also, I'm always open, just in general, to see new things in new worlds, new types of genres I've never really watched before, as well as different subject material. I always like to learn, and I think TV shows are, for me, the best outlets to do so. Especially last year, I reviewed Heels each week to week, and I learned a lot more about the wrestling behind the scenes format. That it's still a drama. It still very much has a story, but majority of its elements are very much based in reality, how scripted wrestling program works. So I got to learn about that. This mostly primarily taught me about Mormonism, which I've heard it since I was a kid. I've heard about it, but it was always that question of, well, what was it entirely? Because I think I've only stuck with like how they normally look like, and that's about it. Everything else about the culture, I know it's related to God itself. Obviously, all religions based on some sort of God, but for me, I never really knew much more about that than when this show got announced, and then when I was starting to read into it. It is also based on a novel, so for me, I didn't want to read anything beforehand, so I decided to I'll do all my factual stuff after the fact, and then but just let the show kind of tell me its story before I start looking elsewhere, because I always let the show because I know some people prefer doing the reading material first and then watching the show to see the comparison. I don't, because, well, I'm not a literate person. I own books, but I don't read. I'm busy, or I'm just doing other things. And so that's why I didn't really want to get into the novel, let alone read about what actually happened in the matter of the actual case back in the 80s. So I just left it alone there. But as for the show giving me the point-to-point, it was a case of me, I went into the show thinking this was going to be, I don't know why. I guess I was just still riding the No Way Home vibe of, this is going to be the Andrew Garfield show where Andrew's in every scene. It really isn't. Andrew, it's an ensemble piece. You get a lot of different storylines, but it's all in a very nice way of, construing the story in a way where everyone's getting their focal point, at least to a good extent. You have the present day cast, which are the ones actually solving the mystery and figuring out what the fuck is going on here. Then you have the flashbacks with the Laffertys and figuring out how to lead to the moment where we pick up with when episode 1 starts off. And then they have a bit of like a history timeline where we're learning about the origins of Mormonism, how it first started, and then it splits off into this kind of like side tangent that I guess is canon in a way, but it's always debatable, so to speak, which kind of informs to how we get to the show in the present day speaking. And for me, at first I was a little bit blindsided by it because I didn't see a trailer. I went into the show blind as much as I can. I only seen the promo image. And I think a while back, I think the only other time I seen this was at a Disney upfront, just the logo with the announcement that, yeah, it was going to be Andrew. And I think they didn't even start filming by then. I think they just announced that, yeah, the show was happening. Because I'm aware this was going to be a movie at some point with Ron Howard directing it. And then it became a show. Because nowadays it's just, you know, sometimes it's just TV shows with a bigger budget are the better medium to tell some of these stories, because you get the longer time period to tell your story. Where for me, I could not imagine this being a movie. I really could. I think even a 3-hour movie would be like, you're really pushing it, because and that's the thing I love about shows and love reviewing them. You get to spend time with these characters, you know, learn about them, their flaws, their development, their journey becoming from where they started in the show to where they would end on the show. That's always what I love seeing about these stories. This being being no exception, because you just see like they're all over the place at times, because you have to do that in order to tell your story. But the way they ended it off was like, I completely understand these characters. At the end of the day, majority of this is a tragedy. Like this, I'm not gonna say this could have been avoided, like the overall events of the story. It was just an unfortunate chain of events that occurred, and just you never really know. And I think this came out in the right time period where I study psychology. No, it's not my major or anything, but I did study a couple courses. I'm not saying I'm an expert or anything, but I do know a few people that are actually I'm starting to be in the psychology field, and you never really know when the moment is when someone begins to change into something else. You really don't know until like way later after the fact, because it's so subtle, it's so minuscule that by the time you notice it, you already part of like whatever massive change you already occurred to yourself. So with this being like, you know, we were seeing the slow decline, especially with the Lafferty, it was enticing to see, because I'm not gonna say I'm not trying to say I'm a very negative person, but I find it very I like a story where you actually get to see the descent into madness, because you get to see them become the villain. And the thing about this is that this is another one of those gray stories where we know there's a good side and the bad side. Overall, if you kill someone, yeah, that's a bad thing. But the story is trying its best to be a very neutral standpoint, where as much as it's focused on Mormonism, it's being approached at a neutral point, where these characters believe in what they believe, and we're being presented the material in a very neutral standpoint, where it's not pro anything. It really isn't. You get the information you need, and you kind of determine the facts from there, which I respect, because there's some properties nowadays where they try to go pro, and then a lot of other people say, oh, they got an agenda, they're trying to like do this. Listen, it's a TV show. I'm just enjoying it at the end of the day. I'm not really looking that deep into that. I'm not. But just in the overall grand scale thing, if you will learn something from this show, like, you know, you will learn a lot about this culture as well as its history. It's not the full history. That being said, the history timeline, it gives you what you need to know. It doesn't feel bloated. That's the thing. Like, they could have easily stretched out the history timeline and made that kind of like the third cast, but they don't. Like, I didn't even know they were going to do the history stuff until I actually started watching the show. I didn't know. It wasn't important to what the story was trying to tell, but it gave you some context into what you need to know, into what the characters in our show is going through, and what is their kind of their background motivation going into like where they're being guided to like point to point in the story. But going into a little bit deeper here, into like the actual story itself, the story revolves around Andrew Garfield's character, Jeb, a small town detective, and his partner getting sadly rumbled into a very, very brutal murder of a wife and her daughter. And, you know, this, you know, starts off a chain of events, because this small town happens to be a very a heavily LSD town, like in Mormonism. And, you know, this kind of rattles the community once we start figuring out more about it, especially our protagonist, Jeb, who has grown up his entire life that believing in this this religion and, you know, these beliefs. And then by the time he's starting to learn about the not the forgotten side of thing, but like these sort of this thing that was kind of scrubbed away from the history. It kind of opens up the eyes of like it's not on the straight and narrow, because there are people out there who and look, if this is what you do, that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying it else otherwise, but there are people that like when they have their religion and when they're confirmed and into it, they don't really see any other way. Like for me, I'm Catholic. I'm not a full blown Catholic. I don't go to church every Sunday because I work and I have other things to do in my life. That it's just not. It's just something I don't do, and that's totally fine. Like I'll still go to church for like the big events, and once I do get married, eventually down the road, I will. It will be a big part of my life again. But at the moment, it isn't. Like, but what the characters on in this show, they're fully like majority of the town is fully into that culture. So once you eventually start to learn about the background information of what led into this tragic murder, you start to realize it. And Jeb, his world kind of gets shattered as the episodes progress. As you start to see the Jeb who was very polite, very soft spoken, can be pushed if he wants to, but in his own way. But then the Jeb you see like by episode 6 is not a broken down character, but he definitely has had his world view shifted over to like, I had no idea this existed, and I have no idea what I'm going to do with this information when this case is over. And so the story informs you that there's a lot of bad people in the world. And again, that's another thing I do want to mention is that do what you need to do for your religion. But my father says is always best. Do whatever you want to do with yourself, but don't do anything to others that they don't want. And I think that could be echoed across the board. Like, if there's something you have to do, whether that is in your culture or your religion, that's fine. If it just involves you, do what you want. It's your choice at the end of the day, as long as it's your choice. But if you got to involve someone else because you've been told to, that's obviously like, for me, I don't believe in that. I don't like, no one should have to tell you why you have to do to someone else. I don't believe in that at all. And as this story progressed, like this definitely did not have me thinking, and I think this is one of the things, like I don't think this is a perfect show. Again, I don't think any show is perfect. I really don't. I just mainly find this to be like it doesn't hurt the show. It never at once like this being a murder mystery kind of thing. Like this has the feel of it, but you already know that okay, it's the Laffertys. They're somehow involved in this, but we don't know how exactly. We're slowly getting that revelation. And this is more of like a story of declining of the descent of man, as I mentioned before, where you see the Laffertys, the focal family at point here, and you start to see their history within the last decade, and it's filled with tragedy. It's filled with downward turns, spirals and characters and people changing into like something else that they never anticipated they would be because they just never grew up as that. And it kept me guessing to like of the big moment when I knew like the moment they were doing the flashback storyline, I was like, okay, we're gonna get to like the actual moment when the wife and her daughter dies, and I was fearing it because this was FX, which is a very different channel. Ironically, I'm watching Always Sunny in Philadelphia right now, which I know it's not like it's two different beasts, but the stuff they're putting on that show is just like so far I'm flabbergasted on what stuff they're getting away with. And then I was like, oh God, I don't even know what things are going to do on this show. And that was kind of like my anticipation point. Cause like, I was wondering how they were going to handle that scene. And, spoiler, not spoiler, I think they handled it just about right. It's a little bit more violent than I was expecting for your TV show averages. But in terms of like, the full, like, I was thinking like they were going to do the whole thing. I was like, okay, no, I think certain shows like 13 Reasons Why has definitely showed us like, yeah, there is just certain things you can't film on television, or The Walking Dead as well. So, maybe if this show came out like about maybe 5-7 years ago, maybe it'd be a different story, but that wasn't thankfully that wasn't the case there. And so moving into the actual characters itself, the main characters in this series is Jeb being the protagonist for the regular like story, the main story, the present day storyline that we're kind of just moving forward here. Then you have the Laffertys, primarily Brenda Lafferty, who becomes the wife of Alan Lafferty down the road. Then you have Dan and Ron Lafferty, played by Wyatt Russell from Falcon and Winter Soldier fame, and then also you have I know he does other stuff, but also shout out to Wyatt Russell. This is the second time I've seen him, and he's always nailed He's playing a character that should be pure and good, and then he's going descending straight down to bad. This is like, I think this is a shtick, man. I think you found your calling card. This is like, you're just like Giancarlo Esposito. You're just playing these characters. Just keep them going, man. Just keep them going. And then you have Ron Lafferty, which I believe is played by Sam Worthington of Avatar fame. I could be wrong on that. I think that's right. And then of course you have the other characters like Jeb's family, his partner, the other Laffertys involved in this sad tale, and then you have the Historic Society with Joseph, who was the father of Mormonism, and then the other people that was involved in the beginning times of this religion. That's what you get. And for me, for those characters, I think they do everyone really well in terms of the present day and the flashback story. I think everyone gets enough time to get some sort of development, because this is an ensemble piece, and that was surprising for me, because I honestly thought this was just going to be a straightforward mystery case with Andrew Garfield as the detective. That's what I was thinking going into it, but I wasn't against it. Learning more about this family, and just like, I felt so bad watching them kind of fall. I felt bad because it just sucks how, like, so tightly knit this family was. And then you get to the end of the show, and I was like, not even the end of the show, like maybe like the week before, and it's like, oh my god, just, it's funny and how like a little bit can change, a little bit can change. And for me, I was thinking that, it was Brenda. Like, Brenda came in and she changed everything. She caused her own. That it wasn't. It was just series of unfortunate events that kind of led into this, where the Laffertys were, it's just a bit of a quick recap here, is that they're a very heavily religious family in the LSD community. They've done this for generations, where point the current patriarchs of the family, Grandpa and Grandma Lafferty, have raised all sons. They've mostly all got married except Alan and one other brother, and they all have a lot of kids. So they're keeping the traditions going. And when Brenda comes in, Brenda is kind of, well, she also hails from the same, very heavily religion background. But she's kind of more of like the coming of modern day, where, well, I respect my culture, I respect my religion, but I want to do what I want to do with my own future. She wants to be a broadcast journalist, but in that community, in that culture, in that community, mainly the women are supposed to be ones to get married. It's being the stay-at-home wife, preparing the kids for when they get into Mormonism, into the LSD community, as well as just being the mom. That's it. Just have as many kids as you can and just be a great mom. That's literally all they want to do. And Brenda doesn't mind that, but she wants the career first. She wants to have like some years of success. And at first, Alan did seem like he was on board with it. I always thought deep down he always wanted to be, but it was always that sense of appeasing his family first. And don't get me wrong, family is first. You should always be there for your family, whether that is your blood family or the family of, like, let's say, people you develop over the many years of your life. But there comes a point where it's like, well, when you find your partner and you find the one, there is certain things where you kind of have to scale back a little bit, because they're going to be part of your family in the future. When you're also having kids, and even if you don't have kids, like, that's still your family. That's still your partner. That's still someone you need to now. That's your new family. You have to go to them. Alan doesn't really learn that till later, and then as you see the Laffertys kind of slowly start descending after the patriarch leaves for a mission, and then Dan and Ron specifically start getting hit hard with the brutalities of life that their dad has kind of shielded them from so long, that times are changing, and they're beginning to have inklings of like, well, wait a minute, like, maybe it's not always what our dad says. Like, there's other things out there. And then it just starts slowly spiraling, where to the point where, like, by the time we end the show, it's like, oh my god, Jesus. Like, for example, the Dan and Ron I saw in episode 1, like, I can't even recognize them by the time we wrap on episode 7. I can't even tell the difference anymore, because those are like two completely different characters, because they've experienced so much. They've kind of been corrupted in a way. I mean, I know that's not the right word to use, but I'm just like, Jesus, like, what the hell happened? Like, what really happened here? Like Jesus, like, they just went off the deep end, and every episode kind of proved like how dangerous a man or a woman can be if pushed the right direction, which is why I was fearing going into the finale when we were getting to the point like, how did Brenda die? And I was like, oh, I was scared by that point because everyone on that family side for that, faction was, it was scary for me, because like I didn't know what they were going to do next. You don't really know, and it keeps you guessing. And then even by the final episode, I was even guessing like who was going to be the one to actually pull the trigger and actually commit the murder. That was what I was guessing, like who specifically did. And by the time we wrapped on it, it was like, okay, now I get it. Now I really do get it. Onto Jeb, played by Andrew Garfield. I think he did. I think he did very well. Very soft spoken, very much of a man of faith, and then you start to see the cracks. You start to see it. I think by the time episode 3 or 4 rolls around, you begin to see he is starting to be a little bit more open. That not everyone is that as what they seem. Where like he would immediately believe his bishop. He would immediately follow orders. He would do whatever needs to be done for the church. And then by the time we were getting to the halfway mark, he was starting to have a little bit more of a open mind, an open voice. Let's say that. And then, not everyone, that they were not happy with it. It's like, no, you shouldn't have done that. That was not what we taught you to do. Like you have to follow what we do. And, by the time like we hit episode 6, which I think was his, I think for me, that was his worst moment when he realized that, he stands to risk to lose a lot, i.e. his family, as well as, him no longer fully believing in the moment that what he's been believing it is entirely right, because just the way how history goes, like it becomes a little construed because you just don't know, because like you have the side where it's like God told me this, which kickstarted our entire thing. Then you have an amendment portion where it's like, oh no, God told me this extra thing, and then it just kind of starts spiraling to there where it's like, is it an abuse of power? Is it kind of like selfish thoughts trying to become provoking thoughts into being factual? Was that the case? For me, we'll never know. We will never know, because unless you were there and unless you were in his mind, you would never know. And so it becomes a case of like, what do you believe in? And at the end, most of the time, it's if you choose your religion, it's mostly like what you identify as. Now, that's not to say that Dan, Ron, or any of the other Laffertys wanted to be polyamorous or they wanted to do these things. It was just at the time they believed that I want to get into heaven. I want to be all right with the Lord. And then afterwards, once they start getting hit with like their trial and tribulation, it kind of starts warping their mind to thinking like, oh no, in this scripture, this is okay. So we're on the right path here. And it's the delusional state where it's like, it becomes slowly becoming like, I'm getting convinced to like, I'm being deluded by this. That's how it was going. And Jeb didn't fully get fallen victim into that function, but it was still definitely the sense of like, the moment you see it and the moment you're starting to hear about it, it is starting to affect your mind a little bit. And I'm not surprised, like, even the smallest bit of information for me can definitely affect my mind. So it isn't something that I'm very much denying. It does happen. And by the time you get through it, it's just like, it opens your eyes and, you really can never fully go back. Even when the show ends, I don't fully believe that he can fully go back. I still think there's a part of him that's always going to be traumatized with it and always going to like leave a mental scar. He can do the best he can to like kind of like sweep it under the rug and like kind of go back to normalcy, but there really isn't. Like the amount of things he learned and the amount of things he's done, it really cannot be reversed. And the one thing I will mention that when that comes to it in terms of like, I will give the show a little discredit that this is a limited series event. There is no season 2 coming out. There is no continuation of the story. There isn't. I'm well aware that, obviously the real life case, we end as soon as the Laffertys are caught because that's the story. That's the story. Like, we had to catch Laffertys before they kill more people. And they did that. But at the end of the day, like, they still kept things a little bit open to like, well, there could be more. Like, there's still more for these characters to explore. I know in real life and also in the book that the book ends actually with the trial of Ron and Dan Lafferty. I always thought that, I don't even know how the show was going to end, but I was estimating like it probably would be in a trial. It'd probably be, that sort of thing. That's how the show would end, and call it a case closed type of thing, booked away. They're sending off to prison, and that's the end of that. But it was always like, the thing of like, there are certain lines that were being said in the final episode where it's like the bishop would be like kind of like low key threatening Jeb, like he wouldn't have a community, he wouldn't have a belief anymore to go back to once this case is over if he didn't drop it. There was definitely cases that, there's a couple more missing Lafferty's out there, and there's still a couple more open strings of like what could this mean, what could that lead as well. Like it could just be, I know like this isn't the first piece of fiction that definitely like they kept those things open ended for the viewer or the reader to kind of like leave to interpretation. But for me, normally it's like, well, if you're telling a TV show in that kind of format, like you got to keep everything like nicely wrapped in bow, because you leave the door open. And maybe that was the intention, but I don't even see them doing a season 2. They told the story that they had to set up themselves to do, and honestly, in terms of an adaptation, from what I know about, it's pretty great. It doesn't really adapt everything 100%. But keep in mind, did we really need to see the court scene? Not really, because that would just be retreading old ground. And, even if you don't do the retreading stuff, that's an additional, like, 15 minutes, so to speak, of just extra footage. But, this show definitely didn't really need to have those usual ending tropes where Jeb does not have a final conversation with Ron or Dan or even Alan. He doesn't. It's just, like, they're gone, and that's it. Because that's life. That he moves on. Like, he's done his part. He investigated. He found the dudes. They're arrested. That's the end of the story. The court side of things, let them handle it. That sort of thing. Would I be against seeing this world again? Not at all. I'm not really like, I'm not. This isn't like I'm hyped at the end of season of this show where like, I want to see season 2. I don't. I really don't. I think this told the story it needed to do, and that's fine. Sometimes you only need one season to tell a story. You don't need to keep stretching it out into multiple seasons in order to, because of it's a successful hit. I'm looking at you, 13 Reasons Why. But at the end of the day, I was a little bit, gripey with that. It's like, you didn't really need to say this line, or you really need to say that line. Like, just sort of imply it and then move on. That's it. You don't really need to, like, act like it's going to be a bigger deal down the road, because there isn't going to be a thing down the road. There isn't. It's just, it's over, it's done, and we move on. I was expecting a little bit more of a tragic ending as well, because, like, it seemed like everyone got a little bit of happy endings by the halfway mark of it for everyone else. But for me, I never really, how do I say this? I'm not a downer person. Again, I'm not trying to be a negative person, but like this story has very much been like a very serious, like life happens. Sometimes life is cruel and sometimes it just throws you for a loop at the end of a story or the end of a chapter. It was a little bit too happy ending type of thing, a little bit like, for me at least, because just the tale of the story and just how how certain informations were being distributed to you, it just felt like I was expecting something a little bit more cruel to them. But again, it's real life, so like you really can't deny real life as well. So it is what it is by that point. But honestly, to kind of wrap it up, because I think I kind of covered all the major statements of it. The show's great. Of course, there is no such thing as a perfect adaptation. There is no, it isn't perfect in general, but I think it's great. It really is great. It opens, it's a neutral point in a religious story, focusing on a murder, and every character has a purpose, and for all of them, they're all servicely well, and it's definitely a tragic story worth seeing, mostly on the LaFrey side, because you really get to feel their decline and really get to feel them becoming people that they don't even imagine them being possible. And that was something that I really enjoyed from it, because you get to physically see the journey and development and see them become something completely different that even I wasn't expecting when I started episode 1. But in terms of that, Andrew Garfield leads an amazing cast of characters, and I think it's it's a great limited series, and it's a great 9 hours of a binge for you to enjoy, and you learn a little bit from it. So I found that to be the best part of it. So I'm going to give this series 2 thumbs up. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. But again, you can go catch all the episodes on Hulu via FX, so go check it out there. Again, if you're want to see more of me talking about Under the Band of Heaven, which is now complete, we have done all the episodes reviewed previously in the last 6 weeks, so you can go check that out as well as you're going along with the show again, or during a rewatch to get even more of me talking about the show. It's been a fun ride. It's nice for me to like talk about a show and just have it be like a open and close. Like, it was open and then it was closed. It's a book that, maybe someday, like, I'll take it down one day. Maybe, like, I'll show my partner or my kids, or someone's like, hey, this is a cool show. It's only 8 hours. It's a nice binge, and, it's very, you'll be thinking a little bit more after the end. But, as of right now, it's great. It doesn't have me hyped for a rewatch or hoping for a season 2 or maybe, anything of that sort. It told a story. Great cast telling it. Great writers pushing us along. And that's all we needed to get. And that's how we ended off. So that was great to hear. So that has been it for our coverage for Under the Banner of Heaven for this year. So thank you so much for watching. If you're unaware, this has been youtube.com/ActionX videos. I did that wrong. I'm talking about Under the Banner of Heaven here on What's in the Tube. If you want to see more of us talking about other shows in the realm of What's in the Tube, we're currently doing Tom Swift episode reviews and Walker episode reviews each and every week. So you want to go check me talking about other stuff, go check them out. I think they're a lot of fun. If you only care about just the show, again, it's done. There's nothing more to say. I'm just, it's done. But anyway, enough with dragging. If you want to see me talking about more other shows, please subscribe to us on youtube.com/ActionX videos when our next review is up from What's on the Tube. Like, favorite, share of this review if you want to. Please also ring that bell for notification when our next video is live. And please also follow us on social media. So until we see each other again, whenever in the distant future, again, thank you so much for watching. And until then, stay safe out there, be good to each other. And as always, peace out.